We come on the air with an incredibly volatile, fast-moving situation unfolding right now in the Middle East. A few hours ago, Iranian missiles targeted a U.S. base in Qatar. It is home to 10,000 U.S. military and civilian personnel. This video on your screen right now shows the moment when missiles were intercepted. Loud booms were heard in Qatar's capital. A defense official tells NBC News that there are currently no reports of casualties. Those strikes happened after the U.S. had warned American citizens in Qatar to shelter in place, anticipating such an attack. Now the region and thousands of U.S. service members deployed in the region are waiting for whatever else unfolds. An official telling NBC News that the Pentagon is aware of imminent threats against bases across the Middle East, not just in Qatar. The big question right now is whether Iran will continue to retaliate against the U.S. and whether Iran's nuclear program is crippled but still viable after those Israeli and U.S. airstrikes. There is brand new reporting on just how we got here so quickly that raises even more questions on how Team Trump is going about handling delicate, fragile, important, and consequential decisions regarding U.S. foreign policy as this crisis unfolds in the Middle East. That new reporting in the New York Times reveals that Donald Trump was influenced, seemingly first and foremost, by Fox News, obsessed with looking like a winner in their coverage, and a Pentagon that scrambled to contain any possible damage to the operation that Donald Trump's narcissism could cause. As one official tells the Times, quote, the president was the biggest threat to OPSEC. That means operational security that the planning faced. Wow. The New York Times also reports that the White House's statement that Trump would decide on whether to strike Iran, quote, within the next 2 weeks was always a ruse. It was never true. He'd already decided to launch a military operation when that statement was delivered by the sitting White House press secretary, whose salary is paid for by the American taxpayer, from the podium. But that 2-week statement had the effect of, quote, cleaning up a mess, the telegraphing of the attack that was partly of the president's making, end quote. That mess was caused by Trump's unhinged and almost ceaseless social media posts. Everyone should evacuate Tehran, unconditional surrender in all caps, among others, according to the New York Times. Those posts, quote, generated angst at the Pentagon and U.S. Central Command, where military planners began to worry that Trump was giving Iran too much warning about an impending strike. They built their own deception into the attack plan, a second group of B-2 bombers that would leave Missouri and head west over the Pacific Ocean in a way that flight trackers would be able to monitor on Saturday. That left the misimpression for many observers, and presumably Iran, about the timing and path of the attack, which would come from another direction entirely. That is where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. New York Times Washington investigative reporter Mark Mazzetti's here. His byline is on that reporting we read from. Retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General Mark Hertling joins us as well. And NBC News national security correspondent Courtney Cui will join us from the Pentagon. Oh, no, she's there. She's there. She made it. Courtney, you're here. Oh, in a minute. Let me start with you, Mark Mazzetti, and this incredible body of reporting about how we got to where we arrived Saturday and where we find ourselves today. Take us through it.
Well, it was sort of a chaotic 8 days from the time that Israel first struck more than a week ago inside of Iran to the American strike Saturday night in Iran. And it was this period where the president sort of was projecting publicly that he hadn't made a decision, but increasingly, as the days went on, he moved closer and closer to making a decision. And by early last week, he had pretty much decided that he was going to authorize an American military strike on Iran. And that was the time when American military planning was sort of ramping up. Obviously, the military had been looking at these sites for years. There had been plans on the shelf to attack Fordo and Natanz and other places. But obviously, Initially, they had to refine the attack, and this sort of played out in amidst a time when the president was posting on Truth Social these very provocative statements, for instance, about everyone in Tehran needs to evacuate, and this was causing angst at Central Command and the Pentagon that he seemed to be signaling that something was coming, and that might be potentially damaging to the attack.
Mark, what is your understanding of the facts of the attack? We were on the air together Saturday night. Thank you for coming in late with us. But Trump's statement to the country at 10 p.m. Eastern was that the U.S. had, quote, obliterated Iran's nuclear program. His own chairman of the Joint Chiefs was didn't say that. He said that they're still assessing what damage was done. What is your understanding of the success of the bombings?
Right. When we spoke on Saturday night, I was saying how surprised I was that the president would sort of make this blanket statement immediately after the strike that the nuclear facilities had been totally obliterated. Obviously, the Pentagon generally wants to take some time to assess the damage before making any kind of judgments. And then, sure enough, by Sunday morning, there were more tempered statements about just how much damage there was. Now, we still are trying to learn more about just the extent, and I think the United States and Israel are also trying to learn as much as they can. They're still trying to assess the damage of those sites. That could take some time, but it was the message of American officials on Sunday, hours after the president had made those statements Saturday night, was certainly different and certainly more measured, indicating that, Iran obviously has some capabilities remaining for its nuclear facilities, but also the suggestion that there were efforts by the Iranians to relocate a lot of the enriched uranium from the sites that were the most obvious targets of an American attack.
General Hertling, let me ask you to come in as our sort of arbiter of what is true. It's such an extraordinary moment where it's always a solemn moment, but when a president takes the country into war, into a military operation, and then addresses the nation, what's so stunning is that, as Mark is pointing out, by the next morning, his chairman of the Joint Chiefs was communicating something different about the mission. What is your understanding of the facts of what has transpired since Saturday night?
Well, a couple of things on the facts, and it's a great point to bring out, Nicole, because obliterated, first of all, is not a doctrinal term. I don't know what that means. Truthfully, it's hyperbole. Secondly, whenever you're doing bomb damage assessment, the so-called BDA, you underplay it until you have more facts. And even if you have something like a small explosion somewhere that is under the control of a commander, only the inexperienced and those who are swaggering will say that it created something more than they know it did before they had experience and a good look at what had happened. So something like this in an area where there's no one around, that it's 90 feet underground, under granite and concrete, where the bombs enter a hole and you see perhaps the concussion, but not the explosion. You're guessing at where the facilities are, and you don't quite know what you're going to hit, even though the warhead is extremely powerful. Truthfully, as an inexperienced commander, I would never say something like it's been obliterated. I wouldn't even say it was defeated or destroyed until you had evidence of that happening. And truthfully, Nicole, I got to admit that I've been the victim of that on several occasions during my military career, where we overhyped something that didn't turn out to be true. So, that was the first touch. When I heard the president say that, I winced. When I heard General Kane the next morning back away from that and say that it would take several days, perhaps even weeks, to determine the real bomb damage assessment, I said, okay, we've got a guy that understands this, especially an Air Force guy who has probably been involved in launching weapon systems from 30,000 feet and can't really tell until there's more evidence on the ground what's there. So that entire dynamic of the initial press conference doesn't give facts. It doesn't allow for the citizens to trust what is coming out of a press conference. And that's my thought about the whole thing, because truthfully, facts matter in situations like this, especially when you're sending military forces off to war.
Well, and I do. The events are unfolding as we have been on the air. Trump is tweeting, and I'm going to bring our viewers all that information. But I wanted to back up to Saturday night because I was on the air as it was unfolding, and it wasn't clear to me what the facts were. Let me ask you one more factual question. Do you understand, or do you believe the military understands what the objective of the raids were? Because even since it happened, Trump and his own VP seem to be on different pages about regime change.
Yeah, that's also a great point, because I was involved in the 2003 planning for the invasion of Iraq. And when the mission set is given to a military force, you want it in a clear, understandable, concise statement. What am I supposed to do? Eisenhower probably got the best ever one when Marshall told him, enter the continent of Europe and defeat the Nazi war machine. I can do that as a military guy. What I can't do as a military guy is regime change. I certainly can't do it with a bombing campaign. So, I'm sure the mission set that was passed through CENTCOM to the U.S., to the Air Force and the Navy was hit these specific targets. It was a target synchronized matrix. So they knew what they had to hit. They knew when they had to hit it. They were looking at the headquarters, the Central Command headquarters, for effects of the weapons system. But that has nothing to do with the changing dynamic from striking a nuclear facility all the way to the next day talking about regime change. Because, I got to tell you, the military don't do regime change, and we certainly don't do it very well. Sorry for my grammar there.